All right. Happy Mother's Day weekend, everybody. This is the part of the Instagram collectors group, our roundtable, and we've got a pretty fun topic that we want to touch on again today. Back when we first met, one of the hot topic was the market, and we started seeing a little bit of what's happening now on a now it's a big scale. Back then it was just a couple cards. I mean, we're starting to see the market continue to go crazy for hockey, and as Cartel said, it's a correction, right? It's happening. But does anybody feel like it's happened, or is there still a lot of room for growth? That's what I want to start with. Like, where is everybody on the market right now, and what is the potential of it still?
I'd say if you had like a slider for a scale, like January and February were like this, like the range of things that had skyrocketed was huge. And now it's smaller, but the stuff still within it is still really, taking off. Like, if you think about, for example, like fundamentals of like what is valuable, what should you collect? Well, like, Upper Deck Young Guns, for example, that's a great place to start. Even with 90s hockey, some of like the biggest cards are Upper Deck.
Right.
So you got to think about those things that are like more mainstream. Those are the things that you can still see a price increase where like certain niche things that people might know about, like personal favorite of mine, 95, 96 Topps Homegrown Canada. Stuff like that. Great set, but not a lot of people know about it. So therefore the price increase will be less. And sometimes once set collectors have, like, you'll see a spike because there's a couple guys fighting for it. And once they have the cards they want, then the market will fall back down. Where like if you have young guns of a popular player like Connor McDavid, something like that, is going to continue to grow, especially with him being so young in his career. I'm sure he's going to get a cup and more hardware along the way, and that price is going to just continue to grow.
Interesting. Okay. All right. What about you, Cartel? Let's just kind of go around here. Cartel, where are you feeling? I mean, think about back in January, you were like, all right, I'm feeling pretty good about where things are going in a lot of different places in the market. 90s, modern, graded, all that stuff. How are you feeling about where it's at now? Like, you feel like there's still a lot of room for growth?
Well, you've seen things kind of come into a certain kind of balance at this point, throughout all the different all the different eras and all the different genres. For example, when we were talking in January, I was very high on 80s stuff. We were seeing the boom in Lemieux and Patrick Waugh, and you would have assumed that would kind of translate across the board to some other key figures in that era. I'm seeing that getting pretty soft, and it's pretty soft in hockey in particular because it was taking off across all the sports. And you kind of want to watch certain markers. So an overall marker in the hobby is basketball, which is kind of on the whole softening right now, but it's because their boom was so big. The hockey, any boom that hockey had was not quite that big. And I think there are more people looking at the hockey hobby, the people that are already in the hobby. So you guys do a lot of the 90s stuff that I'm kind of not on top of. Kind of missed, especially once we get to 95. I missed that era, but I see that it's really popular. I see that they're achieving really high prices because that's something that's always been particularly collected. PMGs, for example, if people are involved in those, because they're all very low, either low numbered or difficult to acquire. There's a lot of competition. The young guns market and the modern market that Jimmy was talking about is hot, like a lot of modern markets. And I think that's the first market that new collectors are also coming into. They're familiar with McDavid. They're familiar with Matthews. There's the hope that maybe that some of that influence will spread down to the 80s, because I still think that's a pretty big opportunity. If hockey does keep getting more popular, if hockey does have more eyes on it, then it makes sense that people be going after some of the older stuff as well. But the modern market lies with McDavid. If he's doing well, the market's doing well. As I mentioned to you guys, his Young Guns PSA 10 saw about $1,000 increase over the past month, which probably makes sense. We're coming towards the end of the regular season, keep the whole 100-point hype. But you're not seeing as strong of a reaction to some of the other guys like Matthews and stuff like that. So there's still opportunities there. I still think it's a very healthy market. A lot of people buying the current product. Series 2 is popular and has a lot of good rookie names in it.
This does.
Cole Caulfield showing up is also good for the hobby, right? So now it's all about, coming into the playoffs and how people react to that, playoff hockey, and I think that will also be a good thing for the market. So I think we're going to see some positives, and it is still going to be an upward trend on the whole.
Okay. Now, Vinny, we've discussed this many times. I've got my Penguins beating on here, but I mean, you're in the thick of one of the top 5 players to ever play the game, arguably, with Mario Lemieux. So his market, I mean, you were kind of right on the pulse of the 90s market too. I know we all are kind of, but for me, Tebow, I'm not going to be right. I'm going to just see regular prices. But are you seeing just the continued steady increase with Mario, or no?
No. It's sporadic. You could get a 4 or 5 about 2 months ago, PSA 4 or 5, $800-900 tops. Now it's down to about $400. It's the market's softening for him. What I see is a general trend, and I've seen it with basketball. Everybody goes after these cards that are like the prism, they call them the rainbows or the silvers,
right?
The high population cards. Now they're doing a 360 and saying, well, maybe that blue numbered to 15, maybe this card numbered to 35, maybe this card numbered to 200. Right. Like the inserts of yore,
right?
We're gonna go chase after the stuff that's not so populated, I should say. When I think about when I first got back in 16, 17, I couldn't understand it. I'm like, why would you want the regular base rookie when there is a numbered rookie to 1,500? Why wouldn't I go after that? And they were like, well, that's just not the market. I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense to me. No. I'm like, I want the insert. I want the rare card. And I think now we're seeing a shift, and we're probably going to see a continued shift into, I want that. I want the young gun McDavid, but I want the glossy. I want the exclusives number to 100.
Right.
The population of McDavid's going to be high. I think the rookie patch autos are going to start to pop. It's going to be the rare stuff that I think, if this market's going to continue to do what it's doing, it's got to take a turn. Because I've heard people say, well, they need the base to do what it does. I said, but if the base stops doing what it does, you're in a world of hurt, because you're holding a lot of that.
Right.
I'm talking like almost like from a investing standpoint. I could care, take it all down, whatever. I got my Lemieux cards. I'm a happy camper. But just from what I'm seeing out there, I've had more offers sent to me, and I've given more offers accepted in the last 2 months than I have in 2 years. I get them all the time. I put them on my like list. 5 minutes later, I have an offer, and I'm like, I'll counter offer $10 less. They take it. Right. I'm like, this is good. I mean, are you trying? And I know what I'm looking at. It's not the run of the mill everyday stuff. Right. I want the stuff that, to me, you're not going to see, and it's going to dry up over time, just like in basketball. They're drying up the parallels. They're drying up the numbers to 200. People are looking at that kind of stuff, and I think maybe in hockey, like Cartel said, it hasn't come there yet, but people are going to start focusing, like you said, on McDavid. They're going to get a young gun, but what's next? What Nick David card's next other than the young gun or the future watch or the future watch auto? What's next for him? What do I go in that pantheon of cards?
Well, there's always been a weird internal logic, especially with hockey, because so many of the key sets, and again, we're just dealing with not a large amount of sets in the modern era that get released. Why are Ice Premieres out of 99? Why are Ultimate Autographs out of 99 not heavily collected? They're low serial numbered. I always love the look of, for example, the ultimate autographs. But it's funny, back 5-6 years ago, people were like, what are you doing messing with these ultimate autographs? Get the Future Watch, right? And I couldn't get it. I mean, $9.99 versus $99. There's always been this kind of weird gravitation to and it's actually not weird. It makes sense. There's a gravitation of the flagship releases, SP Authentic. Mm-hmm. As far as Young Guns goes, when someone gets into the hobby, typically what their friend or what they're going to see online is the Young Gun, right? And again, by the way, hockey Young Guns, in my opinion, are more impressive than a Prism basketball rookie card, because the Young Guns are at least 1 in 4 versus you can get a Zion in consecutive boxes. I'm just throwing that out there as an example. But there's a lot to be said about the branding. It's the whole thing, by the way, with the grading. It's the reason why PSA is so far and above BGS in terms of pricing right now, is because it's becoming like the Kleenex of tissues here. It's people, when they say grading, what they seem to mean is PSA. And a new collector, that's all they hear, that's all they see. They see celebrities talking about it, they see athletes talking about it. I would say, okay, maybe that's an opportunity. So if you're out there and you think to yourself, okay, with Kaprizov, I want to get a low number trilogy. That makes more sense to me than a Young Gun. Go for it. Unfortunately, in hockey, it just hasn't traditionally been the way. The reason why the Young Gun thrives is everyone wants one on their shelf, wants one on their desk. They want to put it away. That it's kind of like it's almost like a currency in the hobby. And then the other thing with McDavid is I agree with the sentiment. You get in there and you say, I want a Connor. Okay, the Young Gun is 5,000. The SP Authentic is God knows what it is now, 20, 30,000. What do I do? You're running out of options. I mean, I was looking up my O-Pee-Chee Glossy the other day in a 9.5 that I remember buying for $30 reluctantly because a guy needed $30 and he's like, just take this. And I'm like, okay, fine. I mean, even that's going for a few $100 now. You're kind of running out of options, but that is a smart play on a few other players, in my opinion. And I'm messing around with that. I'm looking at the SP game use that are numbered out of the player's jersey number. And some of them are incredibly low. Mm-hmm. And why am I getting those for $100 when their Young Gun is twice as much? So I'm playing that as a potential. Give it a go. I think there's a lot of players. I think Mikko Rantanen. I think a lot of players, you can start doing that as their other Young Guns and base flagship stuff becomes expensive.
Right. I like that. I'm with you too. The collectors got to go somewhere, right? If the Young Guns continue to go too high, they got to go somewhere. And those, especially getting into Marc-Andre Fleury, I'm seeing the ice. I'm seeing the SP game use. He doesn't, he's got a trilogy. I mean, he's got all these different ones. I'm like, why are these so underappreciated? I mean, these are just as tough as, if not tougher than his Young Guns. But Miles, we definitely want to get you in here, or rather than skipping you. But I mean, where are your thoughts on all this stuff? Everything you said, like, where are you on where the market is now as compared to when we first chatted about it 5 months ago?
A lot of good points by all three of these guys. I'd definitely say, like Cartel was saying, like there's certain products like the Young Guns that are just, people want them. Young Guns, PSA. For the new guys, obviously, there's people with bigger name recognition. McDavid is just like and Cartel can get into this further than I can, but he's the Gretzky of today, right? Whereas you've got other guys like Matthews where they're great talents, but they're a step or two down. As far as older stuff, again, without a whole lot other than a gut feel, I think like you've got your main big names, your Gretzky'S, your Jagers, your Lemieux, that generally stay pretty strong. But I think some of the mid-level guys that boomed earlier in the year, I think are starting to soften a bit. But again, I don't have any evidence to support that, just kind of a general feeling. But it's interesting to see whether that will continue to grow, whether it'll jump up again or whether it'll kind of level off. But yeah, a lot of good points by these guys for sure. I
like what Jimmy had brought up. Jimmy, now sorry, Cartel, I just wanted to point it out. You kind of said this too, Cartel. Jimmy, you and I were chatting like 2-3 weeks ago, right? And you mentioned how the playoffs sometimes can get that hype going for some of those mid-tier guys, right? A guy has a hat trick in the finals. A guy has a game-winning Game 7 goal. Like I assume, I'm a little biased here, but when Alex Burrows scored his game winner, to get them to the finals or to beat Chicago. Like that was a really big deal. And I'm assuming a play like that would generate more hype for a player that's kind of hovering, you look at different young gun prices and you're like, why is this guy so cheap still? Like I look at Mark Stone, for instance. I'm like, that guy is a terrific player on both sides of the ice and his young gun's cheap. And so he gets into the finals and has an amazing run, like a point per game type deal, gets into the finals, they win, you're going to see a huge jump. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that out. Like that's something that I can't wait for as the playoffs, is to watch that hype, like Joel Farabee type hype happen during the playoffs. He's my go-to,
Even the Anton Khudobin young guns got up to like almost $40 Canadian raw when he was during the playoff run last year. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what it is now, $5, $10, pretty cheap. But I mean, the best time, if you're going to move young guns, either wait till the playoffs and hopefully they get a deep run, or if a player breaks out that no one expected and they're like having a great season, then that might be the time. But yeah, definitely the playoffs is probably optimal time to move any young guns.
I would almost argue sometimes with young guns, like as soon as the product hits the market, if you pull one, dump it. Like, I hate to say it. I hate to say it, but a lot of guys just won't, like, they won't live up to that initial card value, right?
That's true. And that's another fundamental too, is just in card collecting. Yeah. Is that basically, current year product, for the most part, I'd say like most of it is you're going to get the most money for it right upon release before it's like mainstream. Right. Obviously the exceptions is like, like McDavid, like the big franchise rookie cards and things like that. That's probably the exception, or like amazing Gretzky pieces, like the mega superstars. Anybody else, you'll just generally see a decrease the year after.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to me. Again, this being my first time through this and kind of hearing it all from you guys, it makes the playoffs even more exciting for me at least. And I don't know about you guys, but I feel like as collectors, we have even more invested in the performance of the athletes and the teams in the playoffs beyond us rooting for our teams or our players. So that's certainly really cool. We've talked a lot about the 90s. I feel like our group mainly focuses there. I do want to make sure we touch on that because, we've seen some pretty substantial sales lately, right? I think the most recent one that has us talking is the Bowman's Best Atomic Refractor out of 100, the Wayne Gretzky sale. And looking at the last 2 weeks, we've got a sale on the 28th, a raw copy that sold for $2,277 with 61 bids. And that same, I'm guessing it's the same seller looking at the background here, sold the Mirror Fusion Atomic out of 25. Does anybody know who's on the other side of that card with Gretzky? Let's see. Who is it?
It's a no. I think it's like a nobody, a nobody, to be honest.
Okay, well, I feel bad for him, but the card still sold for $2,673. Okay,
isn't it Vorobiev?
Yeah, Vorobiev. I'm pretty sure.
Unbelievable. So I mean, you look at that, and that you can go all the way back through. If somebody could do me a solid and find because I'm on 130 points, somebody could find the sale previously of that card out of 100 and the one out of 25, I would appreciate that. And then while you're doing that, Miles, I'll say there was a PSA 9 that sold for less than the raw, which we can get into that a little bit later too, is that one sold for $1,824 with 45 bids. And then the Mirror Fusion also sold again for almost the same price, $2,613. So looking at some of our price guides, I've got one from 98 Sports Card Magazine, and they price everything higher than Beckett. So I figured that was a good place to look. You look at some of the prices in 98 on that card, especially, are lower. So I'm going to throw the question out to everybody. What is going on? Is this the PMG cartel of hockey? Are we seeing that kind of effect? Because in basketball and baseball and football, the Meta Universe PMG from 97, 98 is like the card to have for your guy, and they sell for crazy amounts, or the essential credentials. So is this hockey's version of that in a way, as like the iconic? Go ahead.
it's definitely following in the footsteps of of what's going on in basketball, and the hockey hobby is deciding which of these 90s cards, again, without me having a ton of personal knowledge when it comes to that stuff. It's making the decision of which of these major cards are going to be coveted that way. And just as it relates to the grading thing, so you're mentioning, I'd have to see the spreadsheet in front of me, but in terms of the confusion over a raw versus a 9, that sort of thing, with a card that is that limited, I think it really boils down to availability. Because again, I personally think if you had one, and correct me if I'm wrong if that was the case, but if you had it up for sale at the same time as the raw card, the 9 would go for more. But if it just pops up at a different time, I think because it's so limited and there's so much competition over acquiring it, you will see some strange pricing when it comes to whether it's raw or whether it's graded. Because at least in basketball, there are huge differences between a 7, an 8, and 9 on some of those major insert sets, from Ultra or some of those other products. So, I mean, that could be a big opportunity in that sense. If you find yourself paying less for a 9 than a raw, that's a huge win. I think it's just about timing when it comes to cards that are that limited.
Anybody else have an opinion on that card? I mean, that's probably the biggest sale we've seen of a 90s card thus far.
Yeah, I think it's just, again, like, Cartel said the comment about with basketball, just looking at those trends, because sometimes there's the trickle down effect to hockey. And I've been saying to you guys for the last, couple months now, just in general with refractors in hockey, there's a huge market correction coming because they've been just so underpriced. Like even in baseball, some of the early 2000, like Ken Griffey Jr. refractors are going for like insane money. And it's just like, it might be like a unnumbered refractor that just doesn't pop up, because for the most refractors, even if they're not numbered, they're pretty limited. They're a lot more limited than people care to realize or understand. So I think that's just something where people saw it as an opportunity. And again, with just generally Gretzky's spiking, refractors are spiking, lower numbered 90s inserts are spiking. So like all that just combined for an amazing price. Because generally, like for years, if I have some downtime, I would just go to eBay, type in 1997, 98, and sort it by highest sold, and just look at all the auctions and see what's hot. And I usually see a $600 card Canadian would probably be the number one thing. But now I'm going to like search 97, 98, 98, 99, and you're seeing like all this Gretzky stuff going for like over 1,000. And you would never see that years ago. Like, Gretzky was like the highest, and he'd probably be like 600, 800 sometimes you'd see. But now it's like, Gretzky refractor 1.2K. Like, it's just crazy.
A refractor, base refractor.
Well, no, I'm talking about the atomic one or whatever.
Oh, okay,
like,
sorry.
Yeah, like a 1.2K. I mean, like the atomic, it's a refractor, but like even I showed you guys that 98, 99 tops chrome or OPG chrome refractor. It's just a regular base refractor, not numbered, and I think it's at like $200 right now. It's going to go for more, and that one never surfaces.
In baseball too.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, hockey didn't have all those parallels either in the 90s. And like nowadays, right? Like, as a modern guy, Cartel, this, like Topps Chrome, and I collect Tyler Glass now. It's like the rainbow is like 18 cards big plus the super refractor. Back then, it was like just the refractor. That's it, And so it's really fascinating to me, though, is I like that you said that, Jimmy, is like it was low for so long that it was bound to have this happen. Like we all had the foresight to see this happening, right? It was happening slowly, and now it's all of a sudden, it's been just such a large increase that I guess in my mind, I'm thinking too, like, Vinny, do you ever see Mario's cards like hitting another spike, or do you feel like it's going to be like this for the foreseeable future?
No, it's common on certain cards that as other cards go, so shall Mario. It's just like we saw with the rookie. Mm-hmm. The other cards are going to have, Waugh, Lemieux, Sakic, all these guys. It's a trickle down effect. But when you're thinking about like the refractors, you have to think about the limited population of what Topps did. If you're talking Topps and Bowman, you had Finest, you had Bowman. I think Stadium Club one year had refractors. Then by 2002, 2001, 2002, there was only 2 real Topps Chrome issues. That was 2000 and 2000, 2001, 2001, 2002. I've been watching those. Those have been trickling to the high side because the Lemieux the other night went for $85. Just a base refractor. So he doesn't have any atomics. The closest thing he has is in Bowman. I don't know if it's draft picks and prospects. I think it is. He has 2 refractors.
Okay.
He has a goal. That's it. An X fractor numbered to maybe 66 and something else. I have them written down, but the population. I'm looking at Yager right now, just up on my screen. You got 94, 95 Finest, 95, 96 Bowman, 95, 96 Finest, 88, 98, 99 Topps, 98, 99 Finest, and then you go 99, 2000 Topps Chrome, 99 Topps Stadium Club, 2000, 2001, and 2001, 2002. You have a limited playing field. Whereas in basketball and baseball, refractors have been popping for years.
Right.
But for hockey, it's not that playing field's small. So when you're looking for that said population, and if they're numbered, you're talking about rarity here. You're getting in a realm where cards that's like that Gretzky, it's butt in the hand. There's only a handful. And those big collectors are going to grab them. When they're numbered and they're rare, somebody's going to look out for those, and those are going to trickle down to the other cards. Well, I can't get the Gretzky, who's the second favorite player.
Right. Good point.
Yager, I'm going to go grab him. I can't get the Yager. I'll get the Messier, and so on and so forth. But that's my logic. But in this market, Cartel, you probably know it better than anybody. It's trends. And what's hot today, it's like they say, a hot minute. It's a hot minute, and then that minute's gone. Then they're off to the next thing. Then you see the softening. It's like the Lemieux rookies. I see the softening right now. They're not all the way soft yet, but when they soften down, that's when you pounce. You make up for being stupid and not grabbing a couple. You grab some pretty decently priced, because eventually the trend will come full circle again. And it'll be the hot cup of coffee for the day.
Right. And just like what you're saying, Alan, that's what we're talking about. I mean, we're still, for certain cards and certain players, it's still trending this way. Absolutely. But Miles, I don't know if you were able to find that, but I have a subscription on there. It's free, but I did find a sale of that Gretzky, and I don't know if you're able to find this, but I think, Vinny, you also mentioned like availability. I think we all know that, right? Like when a card pops up, you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen one of this player for 3 years. So of course that's going to generate a bigger price. The last Gretzky that sold was those BGS graded things that they like do it on the spot in like 5 minutes or whatever, that sticker they put on there.
Yep.
Rock hard review.
Rock hard review.
Yeah.
Thank you. So there was a rock hard review of a 9 back in summer of 2018 of a Wayne Gretzky Atomic. This is just crazy to think that it's jumped this much. So in 3 years, almost 3 years, the card went from $199, buy it now, to $2,277. Think about that for a second. That's a BGS 9, basically. I mean, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. So,
that's what basketball did. Basketball, like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, like it just caught insane fire. Like the increase of prices, like you could even have like those, like for hockey, like 93, 94 ultra hockey, which might be considered like junk, had a bunch of nice Jordan inserts. So like product like that, it was like $300 or $400 for a box, and you're like, well, it's kind of a junk box. But yeah, basketball just took off like crazy. All the 90s stuff, all the refractors, all the Jordans, and I still see it climb.
Right. Miles,
go
go ahead. Cartel.
So I was just I'm just throwing it out there, maybe to Jimmy, but the sealed wax of some of these products in hockey, I'm assuming, are exploding, right? Because these are boxes that were probably considered junk and cheap a couple of years back. So I'm assuming all the boxes that all the Lemieux and all that limited stuff is coming out of are really exploding at this point.
To the
Yes.
moon.
Yeah.
To the moon. But okay, so I heard someone say, I think it was like San Diego, it might have been like San Diego Sports Cards or something. Some guys like was saying, is wax the most, like sealed boxes, is the most liquid thing in the hobby? I'm like, what is he talking about? And then I just like thought about it. I'm like, okay, in other sports, like sealed boxes, like football, for example, like stuff that's a couple years old is like $800 or $1,000 a box for something like mainstream, like Upper Deck, the equivalent of Upper Deck Series 1, but Panini. And and then Cartel, you mentioned that as well about hockey prices recently at your post.
I feel it's one of the biggest plays. It's one of the biggest opportunities there is in the modern hockey market right now.
Yeah, but
because,
yeah. Go
15,
ahead.
16 was
it's insane.
15, 16 was yours for the having at $350, $400 US a box at the beginning of the midpoint of last year. They've crossed 1,000. It totally makes sense to me. They should not be cheaper than a raw copy of the main card. That's the formula, and it was not happening in hockey. And look, I don't need to hold it close to my chest. 14, 15, 13, 14, all these hobby boxes are undervalued right now. And by the way, there's not a ton of them. It's not like you can just go out there and find them like you can find some of the football, basketball product. I think those are huge plays. Someone managed to get their hands on a 14-15 Series 2 on Instagram, and they opened it, and I was like, oh, what are you doing? I haven't seen one of those in years. 14-15 Series 2? You put that away. But that's a huge play right now in the modern hockey.
Yeah, I mean, it's starting to come over into hockey now where, football, basketball, like they're like, yeah, like sealed is so expensive. And it's because people are looking for, the cards to grade because one thing I learned very quick is, I was buying when 90s stuff skyrocketed, I was buying all those junk rookies in bulk lots, and you get like 20 or 30 cards at a time, and you go through all of them, and you're like, I can't grade any of these, and I did that a couple times, and then you're just like, okay, you have to buy sealed. So people are buying sealed to break it and grade it for the most part, which is why it's so expensive. But it's starting to carry over into hockey. But what scares me about it, so, for example, this year, Upper Deck 2021 Series 1, I did a bunch of box breaks. I opened so much of that product, and, there's a lot of cards that are already sticking together. So, what's going to happen in a couple of years? Like, those cards are going to be bricked together. And so what's going to happen if you have, let's just say, Lafreniere takes off? 5 years from now, you sell a Series 1 box for $1,000 because someone wants to open it to break it. You sell it on eBay, they open it, the cards are bricked together. Can they open a case on eBay saying that the product was damaged? That's what kind of scares me because this is big money that we're dealing with. And those sales through eBay, they're always siding with the buyers, and the sellers are getting screwed like left, right, and center. So that's what's kind of scares me about that market for hockey. I find a lot of that older product, especially for Upper Deck, if it's glossy, it sticks together, at least in my opinion. Especially, it depends where it's stored. If someone's storing it in a cold basement with like extreme highs and lows, then it's more likely to stick. Where if you have it in a really good climate-controlled area, but that's the things you don't know. I sold a box of 80s OPG to someone, and he said, so whoever owned it must have had it in extreme heat because all the gum melted and ruined all the cards. So, I felt bad. So I ended up sending the guy like a care package to make up for it. But, if I was selling, if it was an 80-81 box or like 79-80 and someone opened it and everything was ruined, and if it was through eBay, they could open a case against you, which scares me a little bit. When you buy wax, it's older stuff, it's your own risk. I mean, I'm selling you a sealed product that I have no idea what's inside. That's your risk. But eBay can see it another way. So we'll see what happens.
Miles, you unmuted. Do you have something to add to that too?
Yeah, I was just going to ask Cartel and Jimmy and Vinny, like, we're seeing that for kind of the higher end product, but what about like junk product from like the mid 90s, where it's like, you know, you look at the price guide or you look at eBay sales and they're either low priced or they're just not there. There's no sales.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see the same junk wax potential boom, or are you seeing that just kind of creep up and then level off? Or like, it's obviously different for different segments of the market. Is that fair?
It's particular product. So 2 years ago, you could buy 9091 OPG Premier for $75 to $100 a box. Now it goes between $500 to $700, and it's starting to soften now. But they were selling the box sets, a 91 OPG Premier,
the sealed
for
factory
almost
set.
$1,000, because you often find better center cards in a factory sealed set. So, but then you look at 91, 92 OPG, they tried to spike that. You can still get those because they were produced more than 9091. That has Lindstrom, Leclerc, Konstantinov. Those you can still find relatively cheap. But then if you go looking in the 90s, it's the particular boxes. It's certain things like 92, 93 Bowman. It's a rare box. It also feeds off the baseball, the football hype.
I have one over my shoulder, two 92, 93 Bowmans over my left shoulder right now.
Yeah, they're going for $200 a box.
Is it you selling the packs, Jimmy? Was that you?
Yeah, that's me. I have one that was a partial box, and then one is a full box.
Yep. So
there's all these details when it comes to those products, like you mentioned with the Premier. Not the 9091 factory sets of the high series, for example, in Upper Deck. Those cards come out really badly cut. I remember that from back in the day.
Yep.
Whereas, if you're looking for Bure or Fedorov, you probably want the hobby box versus the factory set.
And the way the factory set's packed for the 9091 Upper Deck High Series, it's like a folding box, and it crushes the corners. So you really have to know the OPG Premiers. I know 91, 92 is like a nice lightweight cardboard, and it just slides in. So your end cards might get a little dinged, but the middle stuff is usually pretty good. So it just depends on how they ended up packing them.
But that's all fascinating stuff. Like I remember I was looking into for whatever reason, I was looking into the Eric Lindros baseball card, which appears in the Score rookie and traded set. And then the 1990 Score set was taking off because of the Frank Thomas and the Bo Jackson, the Bo Jackson card where he's got the baseball bat.
Oh, that one's huge.
But what someone was pointing out was people looking for that wax. The way that those cards were coming out, where the placement of the Thomas and the Bo Jackson was where they had a hollow. It was like a lenticular mini card, and it was pressing into those cards, and apparently they were coming damaged out of having been. Remember, so many of the 90s junk wax has been in someone's basement or been in someone's attic for an extended period of time. I actually know collectors that, this guy's got a box, a factory set of 9090, a factory sealed case of 9091 Score, and maybe it hasn't been stored very well. You don't know what you're getting, the moisture levels and that sort of thing. So that's actually a good point that Jimmy brings up when it comes to wax. Now, in my opinion, if you're buying up, 10s hockey, like 10, 11 onward, I know that 14, 15 bricks a lot in particular, but 15, 16, I've not had any problems with. 13, 14, I haven't had any problems with. Once you get your hands on it, again, take care of it. But there is also a market for people that just keep things sealed. There's a Baseball Card Exchange does like a grading service.
Oh yeah, yep.
So some
where's
people
Ryan when we need him?
Some people just like having sealed wax. Yeah, that's true. Ryan would have some.
Right, because he has so much. I'm thinking, gosh, he could be perfect to be like, Ryan, why do you keep it sealed? Like, there has to be part of you that wants to know. Like you said, Cartel, why would you open that box? Like, my friend Ryan, not the other Ryan, sent me a Series 2 box from this year, and it was $65 at the time. It was a retail box. I did not think twice about looking up how much that thing was selling for. Yeah, I know it was selling for almost $100 more, but I didn't care. I had a blast opening it, So I find it in a way, like I like to go back to the roots of what we did as kids. We opened packs, dude. Like that was awesome. And now you have to consider not doing that. And I feel like that's an experience that everybody still needs to have from time to time. Opening a box of cards, it's like there's nothing like it, man. So now you're getting to a point where there's nothing that's cheap, nothing. So you better pre-order, or you're not getting a box of anything nowadays.
So like with also to answer your question a little better, Miles. So before the pandemic, I pretty much went to every single expo for the last 12 years in Toronto. And I used to be a huge collector of sealed boxes. I had a huge like bookcase just shoved full because I liked the way all the colors looked. I liked the artwork on the box. I didn't really care so much about opening it. It was just more for the presentation. And 12, 13 years ago, sealed hockey 90 stuff was so cheap, so easy to find. Everyone had it. And then it started getting to the point where I was seeing very little sealed product at the last expo before the pandemic of 90s. Like even the junk stuff, you don't see it too often. And when I go hunting in the wild, I don't see as many boxes as I did, 5-6 years ago. So a lot of the sealed product is really tough. 96, 97 Flair hockey. I've seen one sealed box in like the last 14 years. 97, 98 Zenith Dare to Tear. A lot of stuff that was more of a limited release and incredibly popular and heavily broken upon, it's sold out. Like this, I'm talking about stuff that got sold out, and people just bought it to break it because there's big cards in it. There's also in the 90s there was recalls for certain product, and people would return it and get their money back, and it wasn't like produced more. That was 96, 97 Summit, the metal series. It was like the foil one. I don't know what the name of it is, because this 96, 97 Summit had a regular release, and then they had a different one that had a fancy title. Let's just see. I have it
like premium stock or something like that.
Yeah, you're right. It's the premium stock. So you could buy, and those were separate packs, that like separate boxes and packs you could buy. It was the premium stock ones. They had a recall on that, which a lot of people don't know about, because a lot of the corners were coming dinged out of the boxes, and they recalled it. People got like a credit towards future product, but they didn't get if you send it in case back, you didn't get a case back. They just didn't print anymore. They destroyed it and gave you credit for future. Wow. Which a lot of that stuff, like I find in Beckett's, that's like lost, like information that's been lost for years that a lot of people don't know about. Because I've had people, especially in Europe, who like the in the crease foil parallel numbered to 600.
That's a great
card. They're like, there you go, nice,
awesome. That's such a fun box.
Yeah, and the increased parallels, the foil parallels numbered to 600, and I said no, there's way less more floating around, and you're starting to see that the prices of those inserts creep up slowly on eBay as well, because it's so incredibly tough to find. So to answer your question, Miles, yes, like a lot of stuff has gone up, but there's some stuff that they printed so much of that, like 91, 92 Pro Set French, for example. I see that everywhere.
Pro Set, baby.
every antique market I go to has a box of Pro Set French 91, 92.
Hey, Matt. Someone in the chat is asking about Gretzky. Sorry to.
Alan brought this up. Yeah. That's like the card of hockey for sure.
Yeah. So I have a strong answer to that, because if he's talking about potentially looking to get one, I would say do it today. But again, we're talking about what the market correction was. The correction was that the Gretzky's were way too cheap, period. And then we saw what happened to them, and we saw particularly what happened after the record-breaking sale of the 10. So now we're seeing the softening. Like I mentioned, this applies to Gretzky as well. You mentioned Lemieux. I mentioned Patrick Waugh. It's happening across the board on the 80s. It's happening to Gretzky. So I was just looking up, 4s, 5s the other day, 4s and 5s. They've softened considerably. Now here's the thing: we have some big auctions coming up. Golden is auctioning off a 9 of Topps and OPG. And
Yep.
we're starting to hear some rumblings about Gretzky becoming an analyst of some sort on TNC.
Yep.
I would say right now is an opportunity. If there is kind of this roller coaster going on, we're in the dip right now. And you know what they say, buy the dip. So I would say yes. You know, we saw the initial correction, and now we're just trying to figure out where it should be. So this could be an opportune time, actually.
Right. Well,
Yeah,
go ahead.
So
Real
you want to
quick,
go ahead,
Jimmy.
Matt? You wanna
No,
go ahead?
well, I go for it because I need to formulate the way to ask this correctly.
Okay.
Go for it.
You know, I was just gonna say, like, in every sport, every sport has a player that's like literally it's a license to print money. So, like, for example, like if you have a high grade Gretzky rookie card, that thing's only going to go up in value. Like the lower cards take longer, like the lower condition ones, to catch up, because after a while, what happens is, let's just say whatever the pop is for OPG Gretzky 9, I'm sure it's like 100, maybe 200 cards. So once those get bought, once those get bought up and put it away into PCs, then the people are like, okay, I can't get a 9 anymore. I'll go for an 8. Then the same thing happens with 8. It takes longer, but slowly over time you filter down to the weaker stuff. So like in hockey, you have like Gretzky, anything like high grade, like Gordie Howe, those big names, licensed to print money. If you have a high grade rookie card of any of those, don't sell it. Like it stays in the family for the rest of your life. Like pass it on, keep on passing it on because it's going to go up in value. Pokemon, anything high grade, old Charizard, for example. Tom Brady, NFL, probably like the most accomplished athlete of all time in terms of winning.
Yep.
All of his stuff, even the Pacific patches and like those early Pacific cards of his are extremely expensive, like thousands of dollars, where like you don't see like Pacific like kind of catching up or being thought of, you know, as a high level with sales, but the Tom Brady stuff goes for thousands of dollars.
Yep.
So like, you know, you just got to like look through those markets and see like those players that, you know, the biggest recipe is like the winners, like the GOATs, like of each sport. And if they're winners, like that stuff, people will collect it forever, and people will fight over that stuff. Like LeBron, Jordan, like those type of guys, like the big time winners. That stuff, like if you have a high grade, you're silly. If you think that like that's hit its like market peak, you're wrong, because there might be a small dip, but then whatever the next hot streak is, whatever pushes it, it's going to go above the last one. So I guarantee something's going to happen again in the future, like the pandemic. Maybe not the pandemic. Maybe people like nothing to do with health.
Not again, please.
No. I know, but I mean, something will happen to, you know, get the market red hot again. So if things dip now, whatever pushes it back up will push it higher than pandemic levels.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's got to be something big. It will happen. I don't know what it's going to be, but something will happen down the road to push things higher than what it did in the pandemic level. It will happen.
Right. Okay. So I figured out what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it. And you're talking about all these different, the market and prices and whatnot and name recognition. Well, there has to be something for card recognition too. And this is going to springboard us into a fact that I want to dive deeper into it in relation to and into a parallel. And that's the thing. As a baseball collector for 4 years, I'm just going to show a baseball card. You have to forgive me. It's a Pacific. We were just talking about it. This is a 1999 Prism Red. Okay. So it doesn't look like anything crazy special, right? Like, okay, it's a red parallel. You all know in Pacific, all the red parallels are all retail, right? And typically they're not that expensive. Well, this one right here, we didn't know anything about it. So even though they sold for decent amounts, we're like, there could be hundreds of them. They just don't show up. People don't know what they are. Well, after talking with Mike Kramer, there are probably around 100 or less of these that were made, and they were all Sam's Club and Walmart cards. So now that the information is out there, the cards are going crazy, right? They're selling for big amount. I feel like in the hockey community, there isn't as widespread of there's not a resource where all this information on these cards is being housed. Do you think that has a big part of why some of these cards are, like, people are starting to find out more about their rarity and so forth? And like Jimmy said, that whole thing was recalled, right? So all those Summit in the crease cards are going up because there's no way there's 600 of them. Do you think that's going to continue to grow? Like the information is going to finally start to grow? Because I don't see a website. I don't see a place where I can find out what Jimmy just said. and what we're going to talk about with this certain card. I mean, do you see that continuing to grow, this information amongst the collectors? I mean, it has to, right?
Well, you would say it has to, but I feel like, for our generation, like we're all similar age where we like that kind of thing. Like the generation coming up, like think about it, like Instagram, like they're all very instant, very short. Like people like watching videos under a minute. So like, for example, like blogging, like actually sitting, typing and blogging about sports card collectibles is not very popular anymore. Like I love reading that stuff, but that's why people have social media now, YouTube shows. Like that's how people convey the information. So unless someone takes it upon them, who has like a vast knowledge to like sit there and spew out information, and sometimes people don't want information spewed at them, to be honest. There's a lot of things that I find very interesting that very few people find interesting. And I just love like learning about how cards were, produced and manufactured, and that's very niche. I mean, not a lot of people dive that deep down into the hobby to find out how, like I showed you guys this card this week, the Pacific Knights one. It's numbered to, there we go, 10 copies. So again, this is just something that you could only get at hobby events that were held at hobby shops called Pacific Knights. And this is 2001 02 Prism. And not a lot of people know about these cards, but they're very tough to find.
Right. Who else? I mean, what are you guys thinking about, like the spread of information? Are you seeing that being like people are starting to finally recognize what's going on, or do you think there's still a lot of unknowns as far as like hockey goes?
I'm like Jimmy. Like I find that stuff fascinating, but it's incredible how much is based on what's entered in a Beckett from years ago, based on what the company told them, and the company doesn't always give them the right information. It almost feels like there's a number of different sets or inserts or parallels, like especially from the 90s, where you had companies spring up, you had companies fall and fail out within 10 to 15 years, where they played their cards pretty close to the chest, stuff went missing from the factory, stuff got backdoored, but none of that information really made it out. So I'm sure there's some products where we might find out more information down the line. Here's a Lost magazine article, or here's a box that no one understood what it meant before. But I think some of them, it's just it's almost become a mythic thing. Is that fair to say, Jimmy? Like there's certain sets or parallels or inserts where you're going on what you think happened, but you don't actually know anything farther than that.
Yeah, 91, 92 Pro Set Kirk McLean autograph. Never seen one in my entire life. Not even a picture. It's numbered to 500. People swear it exists. I even messaged Almir with Beckett. He said, I haven't seen that card either. So someone very closely involved with Pro Set said that it was never manufactured, but I've heard other people say that it was. So again, it's just, for me, that's the biggest myth. I would love to see even a picture. I've seen people post a reward for just sharing a photo. Typically, they'll show the 92, 90. Sorry?
Has anyone spoken to Kirk McLean?
I literally thought about messaging him on Instagram and asking him if he remembers. He's signed he's signed so many cards over the years. Like I was like, it's worth a shot. I think I'll get ignored, but that would be so cool. Like for me, I need to know if it exists or not. Like that would be like amazing. I would love to know. I've wondered for years, like people have posted bounties just for a picture, like $50. I'll pay you $50 just for the photo, and no one can produce it. Not even the photo for $50. Wow. So I know there's a lot of stuff that's like lost out there, especially with the 90s, with computers were just coming in, the internet.
Right.
So a lot of this stuff is in these old magazines in print that most people threw away and no one really goes through anymore. So
maybe that's like the derivatives of the sports card market now. It's like the value of the photo of that product. It's not even of the actual product.
Like I guarantee you, the people like maybe like the 20 best Gretzky rookie cards, like the most mint ones in the world, the 20 best copies. I bet you at least 50% of the owners who have those don't even know that that Gretzky picture wasn't even taken in an NHL game. It was taken in a WHA game. So it's like, there's like certain people like, us who love those sort of facts. But a lot of people be like, hey, this card's worth $500K. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care about those facts. This is a $500,000 card.
Yeah.
Like, this is going to get me like a lot of, like, down the road. It's going to buy a lot of stuff for me. So like everyone thinks about things completely different in the hobby.
I have a question for everybody. How would you enjoy a website that housed all that kind of information about every single set? Because if anybody collects baseball in here, I think Cartel, I know you dabble in the baseball, Jimmy, I don't know about Miles, I would assume no with Miles, and Vinny, I think a little bit. There was a website that I've just posted in the chat for everybody to see called Baseball Cardpedia. I want everybody, if you can, to just take like a minute and like search a baseball set from the 90s. A guy named Rodney and another guy who I met at the National update this page with every new release, but it's more focused on like the 90s and gathering like this Prism information about its print runs and everything, like gathering all that weird information that only a handful of people know to house it in a place where then that generates hype and more value for a card. Because then you're like, holy smokes, like this is way rarer than I thought. Like the Kirk McLean, there's no proof of this card ever being made. And then Kirk says, yep, never signed it. Then you can literally go into there and enter this card was never produced, and I always thought it would be really cool to have a hub of information. So if there's like 10 or 15 collectors out there that want to get together and make something like that, I think it would be awesome because, there's a lot of these, like we're going to discuss a specific fact real quick here on Totally Certified. I did not know this fact about Totally Certified until 2 weeks ago when you brought it up, or 3 weeks ago, whatever it was. And in my mind, that is going to make both of these cards even rarer if this is truly how each were obtained. Now, Vinny, do you know where we're going to go with this conversation as far as the Totally Certified golds and Platinum Mirror golds?
Are you talking 97, 98?
Yeah, so we're talking these two right here.
So that's out of my realm because from 97, 98 to 99, 2000, basically that's Lemieux's hiatus. He didn't really come back to 2000, 2001. So that's my weak year. I rely on my friends for answers on 97 to 2000. Because to tell you the truth, that's my weakest point. Now, after that, I'm solid. Before that, I'm pretty solid. 97, okay. You're on, Matt. Go for it.
Well, this is going to blow your mind. I mean, this is really interesting. And then Alan, we'll get to that question. Vinny can answer that. So just to everybody know, in 97, 98, Totally Certified did a set just like they did in all the other sports. This is the Platinum Gold. Now, the goalies were out of 59 and the skaters, non-goalies, were out of 69. So here's the front, here's the back. And then we've discussed these many times. Probably arguably the most beautiful card ever made is the Platinum Mirror Gold. And the goalies were out of 25 and the skaters were out of 30. Now, as far as we all thought, these all came from packs, both, right? We did a little bit of digging and thought, well, how come it's not listed on the box and how come it's not listed in anywhere? Any website says anything about how to pull the Platinum Mirror Golds. Miles and I had a discussion. We were just chatting one-on-one. They came out of a box. We always thought that. But then Jimmy said, actually, hang on. I've got a bit of an article for you. And go ahead and just kind of go through that real quick, Jimmy. What did you find out?
Can you see it on my screen?
No, I shared it. Yeah, I'm sharing it right now.
Okay, good. Okay, perfect. Yes, so I remember reading this years ago, and all my Beckett's were stored away. So when we started talking about this, I'm like, I have to find this Beckett. And, I found it. And so the only way to get the Platinum mirrors numbered to like 30 or 25 copies or whatever was you had to pull the regular certified gold numbered to 69 or 59, send it in, then they'd give you back the Platinum Mirror Gold, but they would keep the Mirror Gold and destroy them. So definitely there's a lot less of the 59 to 60 and 69 copies, but also I'm sure not all those ones numbered to 30 or 25, the Platinums, were redeemed. I'm really curious what happened. I'm sure they were backdoored at one point, or when Pinnacle went under or was bought. They sold a lot of their stock, and I'm sure they could have ended up there. But I'm sure that if someone sent in a card, they destroyed it.
I'm surprised they didn't hole punch it and send it back. You know what I mean? Like they did with the Score Gold punched, right? When you get the platinum card back, they would send you the gold card with the Pinnacle logo hole punched in there. Everybody knows those, right? I assume you're pretty versed in those. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised, but I've never, as far as backdoor 2, I've never seen a non-numbered copy of the platinum gold or the platinum mirror gold, at least so far. So this is really fascinating to me because, like Jimmy says, this could mean that there's less of each out there. Like the print run is almost doesn't even matter in a way. That's how many could have been made, but does that mean that's how many made it out there? You know?
But again, like that's a weak point of Beckett's record keeping, because I'm looking at the 2021 book here, and it says for the Pinnacle totally certified platinum mirror gold for 97.98 randomly inserted in packs. So it's I believe what Jimmy's article says there, but when they continue printing that year in and year out, well, it just it becomes almost a mythic kind of card where everyone's wondering how it came out, right?
Right. I mean, I just find that to be very fascinating because back in the 90s, they did a lot of those weird exchange things, right? You would exchange it to get like the Golden Blades cards, right? Didn't you get an artist proof? You could get a dealer's choice artist proof or something along those lines, if I'm correct. I mean, those in my mind should be extremely rare because who knows if those all got redeemed or not, right?
Yep. There's an artist proof, and then there's a dealer's artist proof, and then there's the card that's set in that was clipped, and there's 4 different versions of, I'm trying to think, 95, 96 score. I think that was last year, or 94, 95. Can't think off the top of my head, but
wouldn't it be 96, 97, right? Steve-O has 2 Canadian score cards. Or no, you're right. He just has 1. I apologize. Just has 1. Cartel, I'm kind of curious, being more into the modern side of things. How do you think a program like this would go, like this whole exchange deal? Like they Upper Deck kind of has it, right? For you get those cards that have the scratch off thing on them, right? Where you can, like for Synergy, there's all those base that you scratch off and you get cards in. Do you think like something like this would be good for the hobby now if they did more things like this where you'd exchange cards in? Or do you think like that's not going to work in today's market?
No.
So guys, they actually have.
It's not going to work at all.
Wouldn't work at all.
You've got Topps. Sorry, Jimmy, but
no, you go ahead.
They have certain programs in Topps baseball, like the home run chase or whatever it is. It's another layer of work for people to get into. I feel like it thrived at the time. Do you remember I don't know if you mentioned this, the NHL Cool Trade back in the day?
Oh yeah, that was awesome. 95, 96. Yeah.
Like, and again, I was like a 12, 13-year-old kid, and of course that was cool. And you had all the time in the world to do everything.
They were so easy to pull, those redemption cards.
Yeah, and you'd get a whole set back and everything, but I don't think those. I think what people are looking for is baked into the product they want to find. I'm only just now learning about some of these Easter eggs in some of the Protect products, like the glowing cards, the 3D cards, and that sort of thing. Yeah. I think that's what the hobby's into now. Something we haven't touched on, but it's the elephant in the room is like, this is, kids are being locked out of this hobby right now. Mm-hmm. And fun initiatives like that, which could have a resounding effect with serious collectors if they are limited or if they are an interesting chase card where you have to mail in. I just don't think that works anymore in the modern market at all.
It's also kind of interesting, like kids getting locked out of the market, or they're having to look at it like investing, or for some of them it turns out to be gambling. It's like, I love this hobby, but at the end of the day, like,
what did you do with that $100 that I gave you?
So guys,
I guess they have. By the way, does anybody use Epac at all here? You can admit it. You can admit it.
No,
you use
I haven't. I was very curious about it. There's like Oilers fan.
I bought 4 packs the other day, and it was I got a couple young guns, no major hits. I got a Program of Excellence, Rick DiPietro. But anyway,
hey, we pulled the same card.
I will send it to you if you want that card. You can just have it. But they have that program with the silver foil where you if you combine the cards. And I mean, I know some people love that stuff. I haven't really dealt with it. It's got value. I think those down the line might be, someone might say, hey, Connor McDavid silver foil board Young Guns. That's probably going to be a big card.
Right. What were you going to say there, Jimmy?
So 2021 Artifacts has like a bounty program basically. So each box you get, it was like a patch or an auto or like I think it's called like Arum or something like that.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So it's a scratch off on the back. So what, like, it's a race basically. I think there's like a 3 grand prizes.
Right.
See a name. So there's 3 grand prizes. So you have to get the whole set scratched and redeem it online to get these, like, it's like a prize list. But it basically
they were doing that. They did that for SP Authentic for the last couple of years.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But it just comes down to who has the deepest pockets. Because I actually pulled a Jaeger. It was SP'd. So it was going for over $200 just for the redemption code, basically. It was just I thought that was kind of silly. I'm like what, like, some people find that fun because you're getting a limited like Lafreniere card or whatever, but I'm like, the amount of money you have to spend to get this thing, I thought it's one of those things that's very limited to a few people, where like the Cool Trade, they printed so many of those Cool Trade sets, but they were neat. They were neat. It was fun. They used to do so many fun mail away things, like the Young Guns were mail away for
96, 97?
96, 97. And I think even, did they do one for 95, 96?
I don't think there's any goalies for that, so I wouldn't know. Yeah, but, I just find that really fascinating again. And I really want people to think about the idea of us. I know it would take a lot of work, but if we split the work way evenly, where are you the most comfortable? Cartel, you talked about like the 80s stuff, and then like after the mid 90s, right? Or, each of us has kind of
butter would be the 80s,
the modern, 80s and modern. But I mean, having people that could create a site where everything is housed. Like, for instance, we've talked about this card a lot, right? These mirror golds from Select, right? From Select Certified. Yeah, there's 30 of them that were printed. I mean, I've seen probably half of that, if not more, of Tebow in the last year on eBay. So, finding the information and housing that somewhere where collectors can go find it and read about it, I think would be great. That baseball card PETA has helped me tremendously when I was collecting baseball. And, I don't know. I think it would be a lot of fun. It'd be a lot of work, I think, at first, but it would be really fun to like build it and then have, an article like Jimmy's come out and be like, hey, we need to like clip that article and put it on the page for Select Certified or Totally Certified so people can read about it, but that's a bit of a dream, but it would be cool because there's a lot of fun things out there, especially in the 90s that are kind of unknown. You know what I mean? So it's pretty cool. Definitely be fun to do that. Vinny, we got one last question for you. And Alan wants to know, and you guys can all jump in here. This is for anybody, but what is the deal with this beyond just like Gretzky's kind of in the limelight a little bit more? He's talked about more. He's like the rookie card sale, those things, but why else? Why else does he lag behind so much, being that he's arguably, right behind him as the greatest of all time?
He had a bout with cancer. He had a bout with retirement due to his back. He had a comeback and a retirement due to his an alleged heart condition. You lost so much in there. If you want to talk pound for pound, wonder if Yager never. I did this analysis one day, probably in one of my Instagram posts. Lemieux was the closest. If he would have played the same amount of games, I think he'd have beat Gretzky by like 62 points if they played the same amount.
Wow.
Yager would still be short because even with all that time he played in the Czech league, and I think it's a lot of due with perception. Gretzky was always the highlight. He came first.
Yeah,
And,
there it is.
You have Gretzky, you have Steve Yzerman. You know how good Steve Yzerman is? If you don't mention him in a top echelon of players, Messier. You got Bobby Orr, Gordie Howe, Yager, Lemieux. Now you're going to put Sid in there. You're going to put Ovechkin. These guys are, like they say, they talk about those generational transcending players. McDavid might be there. Who's the next guy?
Yes. Austin Matthews.
You don't know. It's who. When you talk about hockey, you can. But the other beautiful thing about hockey, you could talk about Jeff Sanderson. You could talk about Brendan Shanahan,
Pavel Bure.
Pavel. You have so many players that were so good that it's not like any other sport, in my opinion, because there's guys that maybe Joe Mullen. You know how good Joe Mullen was? It's amazing. You talk about Madonna and Kane. Is it Kane that
Patrick Kane?
Yeah, that's American born.
Yep.
What about Joey Mullen? He did it first. He was the champ. I mean, he played for 2 Stanley Cups for the Penguins. I mean, he played a long, great career. But I think it's like I said, I think Gretzky came first, and he had a lot of the highlight. But then when you look at that old video, it's going to watch him play pond hockey. It's Mario, Gretzky, and Gordie, and they go to see Bure, Yager, Lindros, and I forget who else is in there. Korea.
Yeah.
You could do that video over and over again with players from the NHL from today to yesteryear. There's so many good players. I mean, it's just I love Mario. I grew up in Pittsburgh. I recognize Gretzky's talent, but he always takes us back seat because that's where I grew up. He saved the sport in our town. I mean, he did so much. And then when you meet the guy, and he's just a humble, quiet guy, nicest guy you ever want to meet. I met him once in a Gap 20, 30 years ago, and he was with his family. I just said hi, and I walked away. That was good enough for me to see him out and about. And I think it was a Gap. It was some store. I forget where I was.
You were holding your wife's purse.
No, I wasn't. I think I was in college, so it was way back in the day.
Yeah.
So
I think with Gretzky and Lemieux. Go ahead, Cartel. You go ahead.
I was just going to quickly say, cult of personality. You can't discount it. Gretzky. There's no one else who was on the Howard Stern show. The guy had his own doll. And
he was on SNL. He was on SNL.
Yeah.
And he was on SNL. That was a machine that manufactured things. He married a swimsuit model. He was there when the league expanded. It's like, the trade. It's
the press conference,
like
the media.
Mythology. It's like It would be very difficult for anyone to, even if McDavid was winning cup after cup, which. I mean, that's a big question mark in his career as we head forward. That's ingrained. If you ask the average American on the street to name a hockey player, they're going to name Wayne. That's just how it is,
He was name recognition. Exactly.
Yeah, name recognition, and it's a factor in that. Like, obviously, he came first, but also one came from English Canada, one came from French Canada, and in terms of personality, like Vinny was saying, one was a lot quieter. The other one could step in front of a camera, and sure, he came across as a shy guy, but he had that personality where he owned that camera, right?
Right. You guys.
And for the record, Lemieux has a doll.
Show that again.
There's an awesome Patrick Waugh from that set too.
Oh yeah. Sorry, Lemieux doesn't have outfits you can change him in. He only has one outfit. Yeah,
true.
sorry.
Yeah. Oh, okay, now.
Tuxedo.
But yeah, I mean, it all comes down to fundamentals, right? With with media exposure, the exposure that Gretzky got, also playing on like the premier team of the 80s that was just so dominant. Think about it. When Lemieux came to Pittsburgh, they were a joke of a team, like they were the laughing stock, like the New Jersey Devils. And Lemieux transformed that franchise completely around on his back. It wasn't like, I mean, he had a decent supporting cast when they won the cup, but he carried them. And again, he just was quieter and didn't get as much exposure as Gretzky did. I mean, like when he went to the Kings, like that press conference, like everyone, if you were alive then and you saw it, you remember it. Like that thing was huge. Like, yes, you remember Lemieux, everyone saying he had cancer. That was huge as well. But the Gretzky trade, like how much media and press conference, because they wanted to make hockey cool in Los Angeles. So the amount of media that Gretzky got when he got to LA, like, you know, that grew the game so much, like trying to pump that market that wasn't really known as a hockey town. Gretzky had a cartoon. Yeah. That's funny. Pro Stars.
It's just kind of interesting though. I mean, how much everybody can bring up about why he's the guy. It's just like why, you know, in basketball, Michael Jordan, he's the most well-known basketball player to ever play the game. You know, it's funny for me having a bunch of 8 and 9-year-olds in a classroom all day, and I bring up a sport, and like baseball, it's either Babe Ruth or Mickey Mantle because their parents have told them about that. Very few say King Griffey Jr., right? But in hockey, if I say name a hockey player, every one of them, the only one they can usually say is Wayne Gretzky. So it's kind of funny in that way. You know, he's the player. And then that rookie card sale, obviously, that set that record. That just put all that exposure, not only on the hockey market, but on his card and him as well. So, he's the one that you base the market off of, right? You look at every card of his, and you're like, all right, where's the peak? His cards, just like modern as McDavid, like you said.
1985 to 1990 was a very unique marketing machine across corporations, channels like on television, radio, movies, and Jordan and Gretzky happened to be there at the time. Remember, they were both in one of the early, it's kind of like a Space Jam type of movie. They were in a promotion with the Looney Tunes. Was it Looney Tunes? Bugs Bunny? There was I don't know what it was called, but Gretzky and Jordan. There were cards made. There were holograms. I don't know if do you guys remember this product? You could probably
just sounds familiar.
$30, probably a good buy right now.
Just saw,
but it was pre-Space Jam.
Right.
They had the holograms cartel that you're talking about at the Dallas show. Somebody was showing off. They had all of them. I don't know if it was before Space Jam or pre-Space Jam.
It was pre-Space Jam, yeah.
Well, these holograms that they had, these guys were buying up. So
yeah, because they're incredibly condition sensitive as well. So if you're getting them in high grade, that's probably a pricey card.
I would think.
Man, that's just so fascinating. There's so much to look into as to why, you know, he's the man. But I think we could do a whole episode on why Wayne Gretzky is the most recognized hockey player of all time. It'd be easy to talk about. But we've gone for about an hour and 20 minutes here. I think we've covered some really good ground on the market correction. I think we can all agree that it's not done by any means. Playoffs are starting up. That's going to generate more hype, especially for the modern guys, but it will bring more exposure to the sport in general. You've got an expansion team that's going to be going on in a city that's never had hockey before. So, professional hockey, I think that is going to certainly generate some hype, not just for the players they get, but just for collecting in general. I feel very good about, you know, where the market's at, but we should all feel really good that we've got what we've got now because, you know, it doesn't get any easier from this point on. You know what I mean? It's just not going to. And props to me for deciding to start collecting Marc-Andre Fleury halfway into the season when he's got a chance to win a Vezina trophy. Whoops.
He's got a chance to win a cup.
They've got a really good team. Going into the playoffs, let's end with this. Give me who do you want to see win the cup, and give me a surprise. This would be awesome if they won the cup type deal. Like, give me a couple, right? Like for me, I think I would love to see. It's so tough because I like Carolina, obviously Pittsburgh, given Pittsburgh, Carolina, Vegas. I want to see Vegas win a cup with Fleury in goal, not Robin Lehner. Sorry, Robin. I want to see Carolina win a cup, but then I'm thinking, well, what if Pittsburgh plays Vegas, or what if Carolina plays Vegas in the cup final? I'm like, oh my gosh, that would be the worst. Like, yay, Aho scored. Oh wait, he scored on Fleury, you know. So, but I think it would be great to see all of those teams, and obviously Crosby get another one, or Fleury get another one, or see the Canes, who look really, really good this year, for them to get their first one in a while. But what do you guys think?
It'd be a ton of fun to see the Panthers go deep after all these years of building whatever it is that they were building. That would be exciting.
Hey, look at that.
Obviously, Toronto would explode if the Maple Leafs were able to accomplish something.
I mean, there's a lot of people in Canada. I mean, can you imagine an Austin Matthews Young Guns, let alone Mitch Marner, William Nylander, assuming Jack Campbell's in goal for that. Imagine what that would do to their markets if they won the cup. Oh, my gosh. It would be ridiculous. I mean, I think that would be a discussion to have post Stanley Cup. Is like, all right, where's Austin Matthews PSA 10 going to end? Are we catching up to McDavid or what? But that would be really cool for Canadian fans. Imagine the Oilers winning it. That won't happen. I don't think.
Paul
Sorry,
would be happy.
Yeah, he would. Yeah, I'm with you, Doctor. What about you, Miles? What are you thinking, man? I mean, I know that you're very busy. It's tough to catch a lot of hockey, kind of catch up on the highlights, but you got like a pick and a surprise pick?
Again, you guys already touched on like what a Canadian Cup win would do. Like we talked about that early on in the series, and it would be huge for not only the game but for the hobby. But do I think it's going to happen? Nah, probably not. But I guess I'm counteracting what I said earlier. But yeah, I feel like maybe Boston might be the team to beat, but who knows?
Ooh.
Anything can happen. Playoff hockey.
They picked up a really good player. I would love to see Taylor Hall's Young Guns have some movement. I've been sitting on that bad boy for the whole season. Oh man, that would be. I mean, you never know. What about you, Vinny? I mean, besides the Penguins, we know that's a given, right? Penguins have been playing well.
Ever since the Detroit-Pittsburgh back-to-back Stanley Cups, where I picked the loser both years, I have refrained from this question. I just love watching hockey. When it comes to playoff hockey, me and the better half, we're on it. And we watch as many games as we can with our schedule now. Mm-hmm. But when it's playoff time, that DVR goes on. I don't care if I have to stay up till 3:00 in the morning. I watched that one game with the Penguins. I think we were in double overtime when I couldn't stop watching. It's the most exciting thing in the world to me is to watch hockey. And whoever wins, and I'm going to enjoy every minute of it.
I hear you on that one, man.
There's my 2 cents.
Well, there's a lot of fun storylines to follow, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm really excited. I mean, playoff hockey is a whole new ball game, but it's more intense. There's more on the line. And then obviously being into collecting cards, you're going to see some market fluctuation with different players, which is going to be really cool to see. I mean, geez, if Crosby wins another cup, there's going to be I still think he's undervalued. I know his cards are expensive, but I still think Sidney Crosby, for what he's done in his career, is extremely undervalued. So take that for what it's worth. But it'd be cool to see. This is funny. Host a pick. Yeah. Freaking get him out of here. Maybe some coach needs to sign him that doesn't want to win, right? Anyway, cool. Well, hey, this has been a fun conversation, guys. I hope you all have a good Mother's Day tomorrow, good weekend, and look forward to having you back on here in a couple weeks once the playoffs get rolling.
Sounds good.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.